Have you ever felt lost, untethered, searching for something more? Welcome to Angelic Footprints, where the spirit meets the road on a journey to self-healing and rediscovery. I'm Dagmar, your host, psychic medium and seasoned traveler. Each week, we'll explore the world of angels and personal transformation. We're going to dive into compelling histories and captivating mythology. You're going to hear remarkable, real-life angel encounters and discover how you too can connect with the angels guiding your path. Whether it's through practical tips, meditation techniques, or stories that resonate deeply, Angelic Footprints is here to light your way. From mystical journeys to profound self-discovery, let's embark on this transformative journey together. Are you ready to find your angelic guide? Then subscribe to Angelic Footprints today and step into a world where angels walk beside you every step of the way. Angels, spirituality, healing. Let's ignite your transformation.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Angelic Footprints podcast show. Today I have a very special guest with me and her name is Hayley. Hayley is an author and Amish taxi driver living in rural Missouri with her husband and children, surrounded by her Amish friends. Hayley's belief in angels was shaped by her Mormon upbringing. She sees them as heavenly messengers, guiding, protecting, and ministering to those on earth. As a homeschooling mother of 6, she's often called on their help and felt their presence in her life. She believes we can pray for angelic assistance and strive to be earthly angels for those in need. In her free time, Hayley enjoys family, crocheting, foraging, writing, and exploring the outdoors. I don't know about you, but I'm really excited to hear Hayley's story. Hayley, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I think you did a great job. I will just add with the Amish, I've always been drawn to them, and it's probably because I prefer simplicity over complexity, family over friends, hard work over relaxation, and in many instances, the old-fashioned ways of doing things over the modern ways. And I was raised Mormon, but I was also raised part Lutheran, and I've always been very sensitive to the things of the Spirit and to God, and I've always sought to do His will.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, we were talking a little bit off air, and you've told me that you've had many angelic experiences. Would you like to share one or two with our listeners, please?
We'll start with one. And before I go into that, I just want to give a little bit of background into what led up to the profound angelic experience for me. So being raised Mormon, we're very traditional, very high demand religion, traditional family. And there was a saying that one of our church leaders had always said, and it was drilled into my head when I was growing up. And the saying is, no other success can compensate for failure in the home. And when I was born into a Lutheran Catholic family, and my mom left when I was 2. And I didn't see her growing up. She left me and my dad. And then my dad remarried, and I was raised by my stepmom, who's my mother. But she was unhealthy. She had a lot of struggles. So she wasn't a very hands-on mother. And my dad was working 2 jobs so he could have a really nice retirement, which he does have. So I kind of was left to raise myself. And then I found myself in Indiana, 2,000 miles from my family. I had my first child. And I was looking at her and wondering, how in the world am I going to raise this girl to be a healthy, happy, well-adjusted human being? I had my list of values that I wanted her to have and skills I wanted her to have. And I had no idea how I was going to do that. I knew that I wanted to be different than my family was raising me. I knew I wanted to stay at home, and I knew I wanted to be there for my children whenever they needed me, if that makes sense. Maybe I was overdoing it, but I really wanted to. And so I started reading all these books on child rearing, and I started reading these books about education, right? Because that's a big part of our life. We have to learn certain things. And I just delved into that. And after much prayerful consideration, not feeling at all able to do it, I decided to homeschool my children
Right.
and just be very intentional, stay at home. We were in poverty. My husband he's my ex-husband now, but he really, really, really struggled to provide for us. And we had a large family. We had 6 children, right? So that made things worse and a lot harder. And sometimes Mormons can be very judgmental. And because of my alternative way of child rearing, including homeschooling, home birthing, teaching my children to do chores, feeding them healthy food, I had my own way of raising my kids. And I felt like I was being guided in this. There was opposition. So we were at church one Sunday, my husband and the bishop, the leader of our church, came in and he said, there's been talk from people in church. They're concerned with how you're raising your children. They're concerned about possible neglect. So if you don't change things, somebody's going to call Child Protective Services on you. And you know what that is? Because I've listened to you on one of your podcasts twice, that woman whose father murdered her mother, and Child
Yeah.
Protective Services did not get involved in that situation. And
Yeah.
amazing angelic encounters from her mother. That resonated with me on so many levels, because at least where I was raising my children at the time in Portland, Oregon, Child Protective Services had a reputation for interfering where they shouldn't and for ignoring cases like your previous guests, where they really do need assistance from the state and from outside sources. So in my case, they were kind of going like the opposite, right? We didn't need help. We just were raising our children in a different manner. We just wanted to be left alone. Everything was okay, but that wasn't the case. Anyway, so this is kind of what led up to the angelic experience. And it was our worst nightmare. In our homeschool groups, like, we belonged to a co-op. So we would go Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we would have school where we would have classes, and I taught a class and my friends taught classes, and our children intermixed, and we did field trips, right? We did all these things. We were very attentive and active with our children, and knew how we wanted to raise them and the values we wanted to instill in them. Anyway, so having Child Protective Services come was literally my worst nightmare at that time. My husband worked in Seattle. We were in Portland. He worked in Seattle. So he was only home 4 days a month. And that left me at the time with 5 young children. Okay. My oldest was 10 and my youngest was 1. I felt overwhelmed because I didn't have family support. My husband was out of town. I was homeschooling. Like, I was doing all these things. I was very thin. I was still overcoming postpartum depression. Anyway, and my brother actually lived with me, and he would help me take the children swimming every Tuesday night. They had family swim at the local pool because I wanted my children to learn to swim, right? And to get out of the house. So I remember we were at the swimming pool, and I had my son, my youngest son, who's 15 now, and a very strong, healthy boy. I was playing with him in the water. He was jumping into my arms, and I'd put him back up on the edge of the pool, and he'd jump back into my arms, and we were having a lot of fun. But this, I don't know how you want to say it, but in our language, in Mormon language, we say impression or feeling hit me like a ton of bricks. And that feeling told me, enjoy the time that you have with your children. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Of course I do that, right? But that was what we call a premonition. Yeah. And then literally the next day, I woke up and I opened the front door just to get some fresh air. Kids were still asleep. And this business card just blows into the living room on the floor. And I pick it up and I turn it over. And the card said Child Protective Services. And I won't say his name. Anyway, I remember his name like it was yesterday. And it said, please call me. So God warned me. Didn't give me much warning, but he warned me that was going to happen. So this is what led up to our angelic encounter. I about died. I just crumpled on the ground right there in my living room in a heap, and I wailed uncontrollably because I didn't know what to do. And I was alone with my kids. My husband was in Seattle, right? My parents had their own lives. It was me. Sorry. So I I was in communication with a woman. This was before podcast, and she was called the Preparedness Pro. Her name is Kayleen Vale. She still does stuff like that. And I actually needed to talk to her about something. And a miracle was that I mentioned just kind of in passing that because she's very freedom oriented and maybe likes to walk to the beat of her own drum too, just like I do. And I mentioned Child Protective Services, and immediately she told me about this painting done by a woman named Carrie Guthrie, who is also Mormon. And it's a painting called Ministering Angels. And it's the painting of this girl sitting in a chair reading her scriptures. And when I talk about my children, I cry. Anyway, so she's sitting here reading her scriptures on this chair in the library. And there are just very, very tall, very strong angels, male angels that look like, or maybe they don't have a gender, I don't know, but very tall, strong angels. And they were holding a sword. Every single one of them were surrounding her. And I saw that picture because I looked it up and I prayed and I knew right then that God's angels, just like those in the picture, were surrounding our home and protecting my family. I'm not saying that everybody from Child Protective Services is out to hurt people. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that our family did not need them and that I felt I needed protection in this instance and that God's angels were there protecting us.
So what happened with Child Protective Services? Did you get to keep your children?
So I will answer. Yeah, I did. But let me tell you what happened. So as Mormons, we believe is something called the power of the priesthood, and you've probably seen in different churches. And I've been to many different churches, and I've exposed my children to many different religions because I want them to have that background and understanding and be able to choose, what they prefer. But anyway, you've seen the laying on of hands. Well, the Mormons do that too. And a blessing was pronounced upon my head because I needed comfort because I was afraid I was going to lose my 5 children that I had at the time. I was deathly afraid of that. Anyway, and so we believe that that God can speak through the priesthood holder and through the blessing. And the words spoken over me were that, things will be okay. You need to study what your options are. And there is an option to handle this situation without, or that you have not figured out yet. So I studied like crazy what my options were. And I really delved into freedom and what our rights are. And typically with CPS, they like you to let them in. And I did not feel right about that. I didn't have anything to hide, but I still didn't feel right about that. And in our country, if you do let somebody in without a warrant, like a law enforcement officer or a child protective worker, then you waive any rights that you would have. Okay, your protections are out the window. So I learned that. So I decided I can't let him in unless he goes and gets a warrant. So I invited him to go get a warrant to prove exigency, to prove that my children are in imminent danger. And he was not able to do that, right? So it was just somebody being concerned for me living a different lifestyle and raising my children in a different way than a lot of people do. But we had a letter writing campaign. I had a friend that was a social worker, a friend that was a teacher. Her husband was a cop. I had all these people that were in government jobs that could vouch for me as a mother. And we did that. Anyway, but it went on for months where CPS would park in front of our house. And I had to have a plan with my children, like we can go out the back. We had to have a plan to protect ourselves. But this whole time I felt calmness and I felt, even though I was kind of freaking out because I wasn't sure how God was going to do this because Child Protective Services does have a lot of power. I ended up keeping the children, but I will tell you, I lost 10 pounds. And I was really not a good mother during that time because I was so catatonic. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Even though God had, sent his angels to surround our home, I still was a little bit uneasy, right? Until that was gone. Yeah, it was a really hard time. It's really hard.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, Haley. And, I think our listeners can tell how hard that was for you to share that. But how can I put this? It's beautiful how you called in for help and you've received help and you had people who supported you, but also the angels who protected you and protected your children as well from an outcome that could have been terrible, I do believe people come into our lives for a reason. That lady that you spoke about who told you about the painting, and, I believe that there's something that you haven't looked at and you finding all that research about your rights. That's very powerful. The right people came in to help you at that particular time. Would you agree?
I agree.
Thank you for sharing. In terms of who that's made you who you are, because we know that our challenges make us and develop us who we are in terms of our own strengths and our abilities, how would you say this has influenced your life? And by all means, if you want to reference other angelic stories as well, how do you feel that that's influenced who you are today?
Well, if I can take a little step back and reference the Bible about angels with swords. In the Bible,
Hmm.
that I learned after having that experience. So in Revelations, Jesus is described as having a sword coming out of his mouth, which symbolizes the word of God. And a sword in the context of angels can often represent power and judgment and protection. And the destroying angel would be maybe a reference for that. And then Adam and Eve, there's, an angel or a cherubim placed with a flaming sword. There are just lots of references in the Bible about angels with swords offering protection. And I don't feel worthy of this, right? But I know my children are, that God um, would protect them and loves them so much. And then how has that influenced my life? It opened the door to teach me about freedom and liberties and really helped me to understand kind of the founding documents of this country, and which we believe are inspired by God as members of the Mormon Church. And so I learned what our liberties are. And that experience was one that really gave me courage. I had always been this little shy violet, right? Don't want to tromp on anybody's feet, don't want to stand up, just go along like a river flows. And that awakened the lion within me and gave me the courage
Wow.
to stand for what I believe in and to really defend my children and to defend others who are in need of defending and in need of standing up for. It also renewed my faith that God hears and answers prayers in the most unexpected ways, both through
Yeah.
angels and through earthly angels, which I experienced both.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's such an amazing story, your story. And as you said, it's made you stronger and helped you to stand up for what you believe in and what matters to you. So kudos to you. Well done, Haley. Well done. So, Haley, we're coming to almost to the end of the show. And again, really appreciate you being here. Do you have anything that you would like to add to what we've already talked about? Any special messages for our listeners?
So you asked how it had influenced my life. One more thing is that the old me before that experience would never have had the courage to start her own business, driving taxi for the Amish, to even talk to the Amish, right? Because they're such an interesting, isolated group of people. And I would have never had the courage to share my stories, to write books. So that has been a huge blessing in my life. And typically at the end of a podcast, I like to leave everybody with an Amish proverb. They have
Oh,
lots of bits of wisdom.
please share.
So one that I think applies today is trusting God turns problems into opportunities. And another one, where there is life, there is hope. And yes, people can contact me. I'm all over the place. And you would think my husband is a software developer. You'd think I have a website, right? Okay, but I don't. So I'm on Facebook at Haley Straw 6. I'm on TikTok at the Amish Taxi Driver. I'm on Substack and Pinterest and Instagram, Amish Taxi Driver. And then I've got some books on Amazon. And yes, you guys can absolutely reach out to me.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Haley, you just mentioned some books. What are the titles of those books in case any of our listeners might want to avail themselves of reading them?
So I'm writing a series. I've got the first 2 books done. And the series is called Tales of an Amish Taxi Driver. And they're on Amazon.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much. And if any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, please do and listen to Haley's wonderful stories of hope and inspiration. Thank you again for being here. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. In the meantime, If you, our listeners, found this episode valuable, please share information about the show with 3 people who you believe would find it beneficial. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review on the platform where you're listening. Until the next episode, blessings, and may your life be filled with hope and inspiration.